Welcome to the second in our series of our discussions about coronavirus and the effect on self-storage. This is Jenny Sutton. I'm the Executive Director for the association. I want to welcome all of you here. I think someone is mousing around the screen right now, so y'all might want to take your hand off your mouse. It's not me. So today we are going to talk about a few different things than we did in our first series. What we're talking about today is the practical side of things. And so before we start, I'm going to give you a couple of tips about this webinar, especially if you've not done a Zoom webinar before. Teresa, if you'll go to the next slide. So for all participants, know that your microphone is muted. If you're talking, you're only talking to yourself because we cannot hear you. You can use the chat feature that's available to you to engage with other participants. If you want to say who you are, where you're from, throw out some random comment, that's perfectly fine. Please use the Q&A feature to ask questions you'd like the panelists to answer. That's where we'll be looking for things to ask of the panelists. And then you can change your view. You can either see only the person speaking, or you can use the gallery view, which means you'll see all of the speakers, all of the participants today. And depending on which device you're using, if you're using an iPad or an iPhone, you may be getting these options on the top right of your screen. They could be on the top left of your screen. If you're on a computer, I saw Scott Warden greet everyone, so we know that the chat is working. If you're on a computer, you may be doing that at the bottom left, the bottom right. So click around, see where your settings are, change your view if you'd like to, find the Q&A, but please don't send your questions through until the appropriate time. You may already address some of the things that you would ask if you're sending through questions right off the bat. If we cover the topic and you feel like we have not answered your question at the appropriate time, somebody's already put their hand up, but we have not even begun the session yet. So Leontine, you may want to put your hand back down and we'll send us a chat or send us a Q&A and we'll go from there. I've got folks helping out that are going to be monitoring those questions coming through. So if you would, Teresa, stop your screen. And now you should be able to see each of our panelists today. If you have this on gallery view, you may also be seeing a couple of our staff members who are helping out. Again, I'm Jenny Sutton, and I would like to tell you who our panelists are today. Today, as I said, we're not going into the legal side of things. We do not have our legal counsel on with us. If that's something that you would like to review, go back and watch the webinar that we recorded on March 25th. It's posted on our website. It is free and it's available to anyone. It's also posted on our coronavirus resource page, which has a lot of good information for you. So if you're looking for a legal opinion, today is not the day to ask those questions. Our attorney is not with us. I am going to talk a little bit about the essential element, just ever so briefly, essential businesses. And before I do that, let me tell you who our panelists are. I'm going to introduce them alphabetically. That's not necessarily the way that they appear on your screen, but we have with us today Rahim Amer with DNA Jasic with Trusted Self-Storage Professionals, John Manus, Pinnacle Storage Properties, Amy Nolan with The Storage Place, Ann Parham with Joshua Management and the Parham Group, and Troy Shepard with the Jenkins Organization. Troy has all of the monitors behind him. He looks very official. He looks like he's about to launch something into space right now. So we're not going to bore you with a lot of, bios. These are all people who are out there in the field, as I'm sure many of you are, working every day to run their self-storage businesses. They are experiencing this firsthand the way that you are. So we've asked them to share their experiences and to answer some questions for us about what they're doing to survive and even thrive, we hope, during this pandemic. One thing I mentioned, the essential business elements, self-storage. We do consider self-storage an essential business that is defined by Homeland Security as a subset of one of the essential business types. And we were very fortunate in that self-storage was specifically listed there. We have had 3 situations that I'm aware of. I know Jenkins, and maybe Troy could speak to this ever so briefly. We have had 3 situations where local authorities have tried to shut down a storage facility and under the guise of saying that we were not essential. Fortunately, as far as I know, everyone's been successful in staying open. The most recent contact we had on that was from a member in Mission, Texas, who was asked by local police to limit access to only customers who need, which is nearly impossible. And, you know, eventually they did back off. Troy, did you want to say anything about the facility that Jenkins has that experienced this?
Yeah, so the facility is up in the Dallas area, and we were approached by law enforcement and asked to completely shut down. We complied that particular day. We went through some legal to really determine whether the city could actually shut us down or not shut us down. Long story short, we complied. We did not want to ruffle any feathers, as the county we are in have multiple self-storage facilities that we own as well. So we modified our operations to an extent to where we still report the door is locked. We do our best to stay out of view, but we're not going to lose a rental. The access to the gates are the same. Nothing has changed. We're just really trying to lay low and you know, with law enforcement around. But in the event a customer comes to the door, we're not going to let them in, but we are going to rent the space, whether it be via online or, you know, through emailing them through e-sign. So we just try to modify it, but we don't want to ruffle feathers because we don't want to impact our other locations as well.
I understand that was in Murphy, Texas. Is that right?
Correct.
So it's a small suburb northeast of Dallas. And as I said, you know, we heard from another member who experienced something. I want to encourage you members that if you do encounter anything at the local level, that you reach out to the association and let us know that that's taking place. But for most of us, it's business as usual, and there have been very few instances of that we've been notified about. So let's move on and talk about operations and what each of you are doing day to day, and I'll just call on each of the panelists individually on these topics, and some panelists will not address certain topics. General question is, how have your operations evolved over the past month as the pandemic situation has evolved? What are you doing differently? How are you running your business? What practices have you put in place? I'm going to start with Vinay. I think she's muted, so there you go, Vinay.
Hi. So for us, it's business as usual with some modifications. We sort of took this in stages. The first stage was obviously preparing for what happens if we have to work via remote. We did end up going remote with all of our stores for about a week. And during that time, we were basically just preparing for e-signature capabilities. We hadn't done that yet at our level with the release of the TSSA lease. So we took that week to not only set that up, but to train our managers as well. We are now back in the office. Everybody's back in the office with limited access to tenants coming into the office. So we have a sign that's at the door that basically says, we're here, we're happy to help. We're simply practicing social distancing. Give us a call, you know, we can take payments, we can move you in, we can move you out, sort of thing. And I mean, traffic is definitely slower, but it's working. We were a little bit scared, thinking that, is this gonna work out? But customers and managers alone have been very thankful for our accommodations, and we're still able to help everybody out. So again, traffic is slow, but it is working.
Okay. Thanks. And each of us will talk a little bit about what y'all are seeing on the money side of things, on collections, on new leases, all of those kinds of things. Troy, is Jenkins doing anything differently than what
Yeah.
BNA just?
Yeah, no, not much different. I mean, we're operating just kind of business as normal. We've adjusted hours of operation by 30 minutes. We open at 10 instead of 9:30. Really pushing online rentals and pushing the no contact rentals, so to speak. We're still open. We're modified. We've modified. We've got proper signage that only allows one customer in our office at a time. A lot of that is really, it's in the approach, if you will, and how you handle that. We've had times where there's multiple people that are trying to get in the office. We just ask them to wait outside for their safety and for ours. But really, it's just business as usual with a push on your online rentals.
And are you keeping all of your facilities fully staffed? Have you made any changes on the personnel side?
No, we're fully staffed as of right now.
Okay. Ann? You're muted, Ann.
Basically
There you
the same thing. We're open for business. The stores are open. We do have a sign asking one person at a time. We're pushing online rentals. If people, don't want to come in, we can do it online. We can do it over the phone. We're trying to accommodate in any way that we can with keeping everybody safe. Basically what I've noticed is that we're getting more phone calls than, with the internet and the online and things like that. I found over the years the phone calls are not as much as they used to be. And now a lot of people are calling and saying, it says you're open, are you open? So, because I don't think people think of self-storage as being essential. So, so that's one of the things, but, we've all adapted, and what I'm hearing from everybody else is that that's just kind of what we've done, and the customers are adapting, and it's just kind of business as usual.
Adrian asked, I'm not sure who he's asking this of, probably all of you, but I'll ask you first. And are your managers physically showing units?
Yes, mine are. What we've suggested is that if they, especially for something that's not multi-story, is that if they get in the golf cart and the customer follows them in their car, and they just maintain the social distancing.
Okay, so the manager's in the golf cart, the customer's in the car, they drive to the unit, they get out, they stay 6 feet apart. The manager rolls up the door. That's how they're showing it.
Right.
Is anybody doing anything differently with regard to that as far as the units are concerned? You can raise your hand if you are panelists. Nope, sounds like everyone's doing the same thing. John, if you'll unmute yourself, I want to ask if you and your operation are doing anything differently from what you've heard so far.
Slightly different than a couple of people. We keep the door locked with a big sign on the front. We had custom signs made through our sign company that say yes.
And we're going to show that sign in just a second, John. We're going to put it up on the screen.
Sure. With store hours, like Troy, we've adjusted store hours by about a half hour in most stores, and we've started closing on Sundays. And simply put, that's because like 6 of our team members have either been sick or were associated somehow, possibly, with COVID-19. All of them have tested negative, but we sent them home and put them on quarantine. But like we talked about on the first call, we guaranteed their pay, things like that. But we closed stores on Sunday so that we'd have enough staff to spread around to the different stores, because we had 6 different people either on quarantine or sick. And then when a customer walks up to the door is actually locked, and we talk to them through the door via telephone, or in some cases you can hear each other through the door. We are not physically going to show spaces with them, but we are allowing them to go view the spaces, things like that. So a little bit different, but not much.
So they're kind of doing a self-serve as far as looking at the unit.
Yeah, that is true. It's not our typical sales process, but it's
Okay.
not affected rentals at all. So, so it's a little different
Okay.
than what other people are doing, but it's still working.
Yeah, some of, I see a few chats here and there, people saying losing audio. Unfortunately, in the world of webinars and these virtual events, a lot of that is going to be on your end of the spectrum. There's nothing we can do about it if your internet is funky, or even sometimes if it's not. Sometimes your audio just drops off. If you do continue to have a problem, I suggest you disconnect and reconnect. That helps a lot of times, and just start over. There's not really anything we can do if you're not hearing the presentation because everyone else is. So sorry, I wish I could do something, reach out through the internet and fix that for you. Amy, are y'all doing
Maybe your computer has a virus or something.
The person's computer has a
Computer
virus?
has a
Ha, ha.
virus. If they need some hand lotion, I've got it for them. If they need.
Hand lotion? Does
Yeah.
that work?
I don't
You
know.
mean hand sanitizer?
That-
When we started our session today, John had on his gloves and his hand sanitizer, so he was fully prepared. There he goes. There you go. Yeah, we thought about starting the session today with all of us having our masks on, but we chose not to. Amy, do you have anything to add on the procedure side, or things that you're doing? Somebody says it's John that keeps dropping off on the audio. John, stop being difficult.
Typical.
We're doing things basically the same as everybody. We have provided masks and gloves for our managers so that they to use, obviously, and we've taken all the chairs out of our offices, removed those, and put our box display where it's lower than the desk in front of the desk, just to provide that barrier and show the 6 feet to keep them back, and to let everybody feel where the 6 feet is. Other than that, we're open. Our doors are open. We're still doing business as usual. We sent out emails to everybody encouraging all tenants, encouraging them to use the online services and being able to rent units or take payments instead of coming in the office. But we've still had a few that have wandered in. They'll stop at the door and read the sign that says, use a night drop or whatever, but then they still come in the door.
Yeah. And then Raheem, to you, I know you mentioned something about phone and in our previous conversation and how you're responding. Other things that you want to add?
No. When this whole thing started, we built a 3-phase process. So the first phase was putting up a sign on the door, asking people that if they had a fever, cough, shivers, not to come into the office, to interact with the manager over the phone versus walking in the door and interacting with them while they were sick. That lasted for about 5 days, right in the beginning of the pandemic. Very soon, we sort of switched to our phase 2 plan, which was the door was locked. We interacted with everybody over the phone and directed people to do online rentals and also pay over the phone kind of thing. We also have a phase 3 processes where we have to work from home. So we've sort of built a 3-phase process. So as this thing changes, we can sort of adapt to it accordingly. The only thing I would like to add would be for what Ann said, we're doing something very similar where the manager's on a golf cart, the customer stays in their car. It works great for drive-up facilities, but if you have a climate control, multi-layer facility, what we have directed our managers to do is not to go with the customer in the elevator, but take the stairs so they can continue to practice social distancing.
Okay. And I know, one of the reasons, I didn't say this at the beginning, but one of the reasons that we asked these particular folks to be with us today is they represent a lot of facilities among them. And I'm not sure you weren't with us yesterday, Troy, so how many facilities do you have in Texas?
Oh, in Texas,
50?
38.
38 in Texas. And Raheem, how many in Texas?
We have 11.
Amy, I think you said 14 yesterday.
Yes. that's
14. John,
15
20.
in Texas. I have 20
15.
total, 15 in Texas.
20 total, okay. And BNA
15 in Texas.
and Ann. You're muted, Ann.
4 in Texas and 1 in Florida.
Ann told us she had great news yesterday that she just sold a facility in the midst of this. They closed and that just happened recently.
Yeah.
So things
Good
are
job,
still
Ann.
happening here in the world. Okay, let's talk about some best practices, things that you've implemented for your managers in terms of cleanliness and care for them. Are any of you doing things? One of the tips we heard the other day from one of the webinars is using Q-tips, keeping Q-tips in one's pockets so that if there are buttons to be pushed, Raheem just mentioned multi-story facilities where you have to push the buttons in the elevator to go up. Keeping Q-tips to push them. Are there other things that are there any of you, I'm not pulling this off very well, but raise your hand if there's something that you've implemented that you want to share with others. And Raheem, maybe you can share, yesterday you mentioned that you have a source for masks and gloves.
Yeah, we have, we've actually gotten a delivery of gloves and face masks and gallon bottles of sanitizer. And we sent that out to all our facilities, and we ran out of those, and we're actually working on a second shipment right now. So if anybody needs any contact and they're looking for that information, we'll send that out after the call.
Okay. Anything else, other procedures? Are any of you using shielding? I think Gina, you mentioned that y'all had put up shields.
Yeah, we are in the process of creating shields for all of our managers. Right now, I think we have 2 that are active. But yes, basically for the countertop or the desktop, we're creating some sort of a shield/sneeze guard just for when we do start to allow tenants in the office, there'll just be a layer of protection.
Okay. And I'm starting to see some questions roll through because, people don't know exactly what we're going to talk about today, but yes, we are going to talk about move-ins, move-outs, financial performance. You don't need to send those questions through right now because we are going to get into that and talk with each of these presenters. One question that has come up more than once, John, is where's the jacket? And why don't you have a mask that's branded with Pinnacle?
That's a good idea, Jenny Sutton. My jacket's at home.
Oh, that's right. You're not at home. You've
the
sheltered in
office.
place somewhere else.
Yep.
Let me just check our questions real quick, make sure there's nothing that's come up. Danny wants the source for masks and gloves, so we will, I think Raheem is going to share that with us and we're going to put it on our website.
One thing, Jenny, I did find eBay was a really good source for us. It's not usually a place I order from, quite frankly, but as you're looking, you're not finding stock of stuff, and eBay has been really helpful with us during this time.
So not Amazon, eBay.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
Hey, Jenny, if you want the information for the call, it's you can either get it from supply side, or you can get it from acmemaskco.com, acmemaskco.com. Acme Mask is delivering within about a week. They're based out of California, and then supply side is based out of Ohio.
Right, and SupplySide is a member of ours. They actually provide, things to the industry itself. We're not endorsing these companies by saying this, and honestly, some of the pricing that Raheem shared with us yesterday, BNA felt like she was getting a better deal elsewhere. You do your search around, but if you are desperate and you're not finding what you're looking for, you found a good source and has been ordering quite a few of them. So, anything else on the procedure side, the cleanliness, the things that your managers are doing? Have any of you had pushback from managers, had managers who are just freaking out over having to be out, at the job? Raise your hand if you want to speak to that. No? So, John?
I've actually had the exact opposite. I've had 7 of our team members email directly and thank me for keeping them employed through the whole thing, and thanked me for protecting them by keeping the front door closed, etc. So it's actually been the opposite response from them, where, you know, like I mentioned earlier, we had a couple people that the one lady's husband was associated with COVID-19. So we sent her home and had her do collection calls and stuff from the house, and downloaded SiteLink to her home computer, things like that. And she was like, oh my God, thank you for, you know, 1, paying me, but 2, giving me something to do while I'm at home. So it's been the exact opposite. It hasn't
Do
been-
any of you, sorry, John, not to speak over you, but do any of you have managers with children at home who've, you know, because of school situations, Amy?
Yeah,
You're-
we do. We've had some that have had to, we had one that had to stay home, her daycare closed for a period of time. The rest of them, the kids have not been an issue. Most of our managers are on site, so the kids are just upstairs, you know, in the apartment, which works out fine because they're still right by them. We've had a couple that have some immune issues that have asked to stay home, and so we have just put them out and allowed them to take vacation time and stay home at this point.
Someone asked to repeat the source on the mask, and I think I got it right. Supply side and acmemasks.com. Let's put that out there.
AcmeMaskCO.com.
What was that again, Raheem?
AcmeMaskCO.com.
Oh.com. Thank you. I missed the CO part.
On
You
the-
know,
On the masks also, Jenny, we found jiffyshirts.com that usually sells like blank t-shirts for crafters and things like that. They started making masks, and they're just
Nope.
oops. Am I the only one? Yeah, I think she froze up, John. Amy, you froze up there
Okay,
first.
let's do that.
Oh, sorry.
Shirts.com.
Jiffyshirts.com, and they're just plain, they're black. So to your point, if you wanted to brand them, you could easily put your logo on them or anything else on them, because they're just plain black. They're, you know, they're not medical grade, but they are comfortable.
Let's segue into marketing real quick, because that's one of our questions and one of the things we want to talk about today. And yes, don't worry, y'all. We are going to talk about performance and move-ins and move-outs. I promise we're going to get there. I want to make sure people are on the session before we start talking about that, because it's very important to everyone. As far as marketing, Amy just mentioned an example. And John, of course, being the marketer that he is, we had to tease him because, you know, it's like, hey, you let this opportunity go by. You didn't put your logo on your mask. Let's talk about marketing. What's appropriate, what you're doing, how you've changed your processes, just anything that's different or unusual. I'm going to start with VNA on this one and let her unmute herself, and then we'll go around and talk about that. That was an example. Amy mentioned, you know, a chance to put your logo. Is that appropriate? How do you feel about that? VNA?
Quite frankly, I haven't thought about putting a logo on a masks. I mean, I think it's clever. It would be a nice thing to hand out to people. We haven't really thought about gimmies in general, but just marketing in general, you know, we still do grassroots marketing. We're not doing that right now, obviously. So it's a little bit of a hiccup, but as far as digital marketing, it's really just business as usual. I mean, we're sort of always tweaking our plan of what we're going to do. You know, just watching traffic, move-ins, move-outs, calls, and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, traffic is lower, you know, slower now. So we're watching it closely and making tweaks. But for me, it's still just business as usual. It's just, you know, different tweaks because we have less move-ins, less traffic.
I assume Trusted Self-Storage uses social media.
We do. We're Facebook users. I mean, the way we utilize Facebook is really just kind of creative content. It's not really a sales content for us. So, you know, we're putting clever things on washing and tips like that, but it's more just tips and not really move-in content, sales content.
And I'm going to move over to Troy and ask if, are y'all still doing things like pay-per-click? Do you know if Jenkins has adjusted their marketing?
So on the Facebook side, we do very much the same, and Facebook's really hard to track and really quantify your spend. Just in general, from an SEO and pay-per-click standpoint, we have seen an uptick in usage on an SEO and pay-per-click side, but that could be deceiving too, because your customers are really searching just for a call to either make a payment or ask you a question if you're open. So it doesn't necessarily always lead to a lead, if you will. But on the pay-per-click side, we're adjusting where you see some lost opportunity. We set a budget for each particular location. And as we monitor that budget and as we approach it, we always look to see if we need to increase it at a particular location if we have some lost opportunity. So where we can increase, we will. Where you wouldn't necessarily decrease, because even if you have a $1,000 budget on a pay-per-click campaign, if you set a $1,000 budget on a pay-per-click campaign, you don't necessarily always spend that amount, but you always want to make sure you're adjusting upward to make sure you don't have any lost opportunity.
Okay, and just a couple of things. I try not to look at chat too much during the presentation because it tends to get me off track. But a thank you to Anne for her words of wisdom on the first go round. Somebody says because of you, they stayed open. They rented 18 units since the beginning of April. They're only open Monday through Friday. So, still business as usual. And I also want to encourage, rather than through the chat, if anyone has a great marketing scheme that you have used successfully that has worked really well, I'm going to call on Ann next because I wanted her to talk about something they did recently at one of her stores. Just as something that they're experimenting with. And then I'm going to ask Amy to talk about some things they're doing on their social media. If you have a great idea, go ahead and send that through and under the Q&A so that we can tell everyone about it. And I'm talking to you as an attendee. Tell us through the Q&A that's something that has really worked well for you. I have a neighbor who runs a car dealership, and they ran a Facebook special, and they are selling cars like crazy. And, there are a couple of reasons for that, I'm sure, but he said a lot of the other dealerships are suffering, and they instead are having their best month ever. So not to be crass, we all know it's a difficult time. We know it's something you have to be sensitive about, but it doesn't mean you have to stop marketing. And it doesn't mean you have to quit putting out information. So Anne, tell us what one of your managers did.
So in Buda, Texas, we're right beside the Cabela's. And when we built it, we made an agreement with Cabela's that we would go along with that kind of theme. So we have a huge metal buffalo that sits out in front of our property. And my manager went out there and put a mask on the buffalo the other day. And he's had a lot of people, it's on a very busy street, that pull over and stop and get out and take a picture with the buffalo now. And if he steps out on the porch, they wave at him and laugh and whatever. So it's really it was a joke, basically. But it does attract attention, and it brings a little levity to a very serious situation. And we as Americans like to laugh about things, so that's a good thing. But, it's that outside the box type thinking as far as marketing goes.
Yes. Yeah. People can still appreciate it. Like you said, they can still laugh at things. Occasionally you're going to hit a nerve with someone. But Amy, if you'll talk a little bit about what your I know I saw some of the things that y'all did recently on the social side. What was your approach?
We've just been playing on Facebook and trying to keep it light. We've done some funny graphics with, the person hitting the toilet paper, and that, promoted that we could store your toilet paper and paper towels for you. We've done, one that we'll store anything but your kids, with the kids doing their homework or whatever. And just had some fun. One of them we did was a spoof with Oprah Winfrey that was talking about I'm essential, you're essential, which was interesting because one of the comments was, why are you essential? What makes you essential? It gave us a chance to explain it, and they were like, oh, well, we never would have thought of that. That's great. So we've boosted them, but it's not, I'm sure it's not driven any rentals necessarily. It's just been something fun and to keep it light. We've had a lot of comments on it that, just keeping it up there.
Yeah, and to your point, and Ann mentioned this earlier, a couple of others have mentioned it, your customers are just kind of wondering, are you open? You know, are you essential? So it is accomplishing something, and it is putting out the message that you are open for business and that you are available. Does anybody else, John, unmute yourself?
Yep.
Thank you.
So something simple was on our website, we have scrolling pictures that go by, and our marketing company took and made a scrolling picture that is the first picture that shows up that says, yes, we're open due to COVID-19. These are some of the things you can do. You can rent online, you can pay online, you can call the store, blah, blah, blah. And that is the first thing you see when the website comes up, and then it scrolls to the pictures. It's an actual picture, but it's a word picture, so to speak. It's not an actual picture. And it's something simple, but it communicates some of the things they can do to help them and to help us both at the same time.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on the marketing topic? I'm going to move over to the move outs and move ins and that sort of thing because the questions just keep coming. So obviously this is a big concern, and I assume that for some of the folks that are asking this question, they are experiencing either more move outs than they were expecting or maybe not. Let's talk a little bit about that. I'm going to throw it back to you, John, because you talked a little bit yesterday about stats. So let's talk about data. What are y'all seeing? What are you tracking? What are your numbers telling you compared to last year? What are some of the facts? John?
Well, I'm a data junkie, as most of you guys know. So we've tracked all kinds of good stuff. But last month, the month of March, in 20 stores, we had 132 more rentals this March than we did last March in 20 stores.
How many more, John?
132. So
for how many
20
facilities?
20 facilities. Yeah. So we had a killer month, and as of yesterday, what's today? Thursday. As of Tuesday, we have a 35% increase in move-ins this month than we did this month last year. And we've got a 6% decrease in move-outs this year to last year. So,
John,
yes.
These are not lease-up properties?
So one of them is a lease-up property.
Okay.
So I had to think about that for a second because most of our lease-ups are done.
Okay.
As far as some other things like phone calls versus internet, things like that, I did a analysis on Monday of phone calls versus web, and it's almost identical to last year in numbers. And we were off by 1 or 2 phone calls, and we were off by 1 or 2 web inquiries, which I thought was interesting because you would think that those customers would use more of the online platform than they would. But to Ann's point a little bit earlier, is the phone's ringing more as well. So it's apples to apples. So I'm making these numbers up, but if it's 50 phone calls, it's 50 web. And last year, if it was 50 phone calls, it was 50 web. So the numbers are apple to apples. But what we've seen as far as a different behavior is our weekend business has slowed down to a snail's pace, but our Monday through Friday business is just booming. So I relate that to, I tease about it is, you know, husband and wife are at home, homeschooling the kids. The wife's bitching at the husband to clean out the garage. He knows that he could do a non-touch move-in with every self-storage property. He wants to get away from the kids and the wife yelling at him all the time. So he goes and rents a space. So, and we've seen that Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, they spend time together. So they're not renting on the weekends now, they're renting Monday through Friday. So that's the behavioral changes or similarities that we've seen. But it's been a good 7 weeks or so.
I'm coming to you, Ann, next. Ann, you made a point yesterday about And I guess part of me, I'm very sensitive to the fact that some of the people on the webinar are probably saying, well, that's not my experience. What was your point yesterday about,
Well, everything is demographically based in self-storage. I mean, if you're already in a pretty good market and you've had some really good lease ups, then you're probably going to continue to do that. If you're in a market that's flooded with a lot of REITs and you're, competing with them pricing, because I'm going to tell you, they're getting really brutal. You're going to have a little bit different experience. I'm going to tell you here in my corporate office in Bulverde, which we're a rural market, we've been here a long, long time. I'm a little bit ahead of where I was last year. What's interesting is that my collections are down, which is kind of weird considering the situation. And
collections were good?
The collections are less than they were last year. So at this time, so that's a very interesting.
Delinquencies are down for you.
Yeah. But this is with this store. If I go into San Antonio, I don't know if it's because it's a more populated area. People are a little bit less likely to get out as they would be in a rural environment. I'm seeing less traffic than I had last year. It's interesting because I'm with John on the weekend. Weekends are dead. But I'll have like 4 people come in one day and rent, and then I won't see anybody for 2 days. And so it's very sporadic. I can't even compare it to anything that we've ever been through because we've never been through anything like this. But I think that we're kind of holding our own. I think that some people are waiting until all this is over after they've cleaned everything out, and then they'll jump in and come. But yeah, it's a store by store type of a thing. But I think, like I said, I think we're holding our own. I'm not losing anything at this point. I don't have a lot of big gains like John is saying, but I'm not losing at this point.
Well, you're not John, not everybody.
I know. I just need to go sit with him and see what's going on.
No.
It has everything to do with demographics and location.
Yeah.
It's my pretty face.
And that's it.
It's my pretty face.
Raheem, I'm coming your way next, but I did want to tell y'all that, we saw a chat from, let's see, Christine said, all my tenants paid this month. Not a problem here. 3 tenants paid half and they're paying the balance tomorrow. Somebody else says, so it's not across the board. Raheem, what's Devon's experience?
Yeah, one thing we did is making sure that we had a robust website, and we invested in that early on. So beginning of this year, we actually built a brand new website, and we've seen almost a 300% increase in traffic coming in Q1. And as we go into the second quarter, one thing that we did is, again, trying to be proactive, is we called all of our customers and started building a positive, trust-based relationship with them. We asked them to put themselves on autopay, start practicing social distancing, don't come into the office to make payments. And I think by us getting in front of that, we're seeing a couple different things happening. Number one was March, we saw almost a 35% increase in our traffic or in our rentals. And currently for April, we're seeing almost a 19% drop in vacates. So, all of this is sort of playing into each other. But, we're also seeing a big shift from, seeing a big drop in walk-in traffic, almost 70%. But then we're seeing a big uptick in call-in traffic, almost 66%. So, this is a great time operationally if you haven't done this already. And some of us have done that in the past, is train our team on how to have a conversation over the phone, how to build rapport with the customer. So if you haven't dusted those old shoes out, this is a great time to get in front of your team, get them on Zoom, get them in different platforms, and just have that training conversation on how do you interact with the customer. Because if you're seeing more and more of that traffic switching to online, you want to make sure that your team is, has that positive vibe, is full of energy, is smiling over the phone. And those are some of the things that seem to get missed.
Yeah. Okay. So now some of the questions that are popping up now, we talked a little bit about data, but as Raheem did, if y'all would also address the topic of move outs. Obviously, some people are seeing more move outs already. They're getting nervous very quickly. Amy, has that been your experience?
Sorry. Yeah, we have seen more. We saw a lot of move outs at the very end of the month and the first of the month. I think that contributed. Our collections were great for the first of the month, for the first 7 days. And I think that's because the people that knew they didn't have the money went ahead and moved out. We've seen a huge decrease in our rentals. We're about 35% down on ends right now. But what's worse about that is that we're also about 13% below street rate from what we were last month at the same time. So to get the rentals, we're really having to dig deeper to get to those guys.
Amy, is that something that was already trending that way?
No, we were actually trending up and looking strong. That was a definite decrease.
Okay, and I just on the rate, because I knew the other
Right.
things.
Yeah, no, on the rates too. We're down. We're down, not down as much as we thought we would be when this started, but we're down quite a bit over what we projected to be for the year. So, overall month, over month last month and over same year, we're seeing very little difference. It's just that we had a projected increase that we lost.
And I didn't say at the beginning, I didn't go into a lot of detail, but Amy's facilities are in the coastal region near Corpus Christi and in Houston, Victoria, that general area, just in case people are wondering. Because I know somebody asked earlier, they're like, hey, what area are you in? Troy, I'm going to come to you next and have you take that same question. What is Jenkins seeing with your 40 or so stores?
Yeah. So as a whole, can you hear me? Hopefully.
Yes.
So as a whole, I'll probably give you a really good sampling, and I'll address just as the portfolio. In March, compared to year over year, we were tracking up 46% in move-in activity. We had some heavy move-outs come April, the first weekend in April, the first week of April. And since then, we've seen a decrease in move-ins by about 24% as a whole. So not just Texas, but as a whole. Last week alone, it seemed to level out to where we had just as many move-ins as move-outs, but it really hit hard the first week of April is what we're seeing. I don't know what to expect moving forward. It's just one of those things we're tracking on a daily basis and trying to make some modifications where we can. Delinquency, from a delinquency standpoint, that really hasn't been enough to alert us. We increased 0.6%. So on an average, we're about 3.6%. Nothing there that's concerning. I will say from an SEO standpoint and a pay-per-click campaign standpoint, those numbers are still kind of crazy. We are down in reservations on SEO and pay-per-click by roughly 20%. Those are just reservations. We're up in SEO and pay-per-click online rentals 34%. So we're seeing a huge swing of people actually renting the space and really adhering to the no contact and what they're wanting. So we're trying to modify our rental process. We're not taking away from what we do in store, but we want to modify and continue to make it as easy as we can and to drive that on where the traffic's heading and what our customers are actually telling us they want.
Yeah, and back to Raheem's point, there's never been a more important time to have a website that works and that makes it easy for people to rent. If it's hard to do the transaction, people are probably going to look elsewhere.
Yeah, and you got to be, and I'll just say this, you got to be careful, and Raheem said it perfectly. Yes, the website, but he also talked about that touch point, and I'll give this to John. It's something he's always said. Don't lose the fact that people still buy from people, period. So whether it's on the online, whether it's a rental, that touch point means more, and especially during these times. So don't lose that fact that people buy from people.
Yeah, I think Ann told us a story yesterday as we were talking about this, and being sensitive to a particular customer who has leased from her for years, who's now struggling because she's lost her multiple jobs. That's still pretty important. Ann, do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I think one of the things that are you going to talk about our program that we've got to help out? Is that what you're asking, Jenny?
Yes.
Okay. So, in fact, I just heard from one of my stores where they had a commercial customer that we've had for a very long time who is not essential, and is trying desperately to pay their employees as much. And they came in and said, look, we just don't need this. We can't do the storage. And so what we've done is we have a program where I've allotted a certain amount of money per store, that if they have a loyal customer, someone who's always paid and they're in a bind, that we will pay their rent for them this month. And so that's what we've ended up doing. The other one we had was a grandmother who's got her grandkids living with her, and she's now struggling. Just, certain customers that we kind of know and we've known a long time. And that's, to me, what's important about self-storage, is that your managers need to know who your customers are, and like Raheem says, develop that great relationship, because this is how we're going to all get through with everybody, is by knowing who they are and what their real story is. So, that's a program that we've kind of implemented. I'm leaving it up to the managers, because nobody knows the customers better than my managers do, and has the relationship with my managers. Like I said, my CPA and I will talk about it later.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving away from maybe the more human element and back to the money side, because people are still asking a couple questions on that side. Late fees, concessions. We're going to talk about concessions and late fees next, and then we'll get into these last couple of questions. Raheem, you raised your hand.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we did, right? At the end of March is when we called our customers. We talked about how we were waiving all late fees. We were not going to raise any rates for the next 2 months. And we also talked about a flexible payment plan, FPP, for our customers. So I think that, in a combination of all of those is, as I said, building that positive, trusted relationship with our customers. I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a little bit of a, ease up on vacates. Is we're getting in front of the customers that are actually coming to us and having a conversation about their tough times and what we can do to help them. And we've given that responsibility and opened up those doors and put that program in front of our managers and in front of our regionals, so they can have that conversation and not have to wait for the bureaucracy to get through.
And Raheem, have you suspended collections?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So no auctions.
Collections, auctions. We're not overlocking. No late fees. We're trying to do everything possible, trying to make sure that the customer is taken care of over the course of the next 2 months.
Okay. Who is doing something differently than what Devin is doing? Who is, I'm going to ask you, John, but if you are doing anything differently as far as late fees, rate increases, or foreclosure auctions, if you'll raise your hand. John, first to you. Unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
So I'll start with late fees. It's technically business as usual. What we've instructed the stores to do is deal with the customer on a one-on-one basis, be empathetic, but still have the approach as if we're going through the process and we're going to end up auctioning them, even though we're dealing with them on a one-on-one basis. So it's not, so that it doesn't become a free-for-all, but we have a little bit of leverage, but we deal with it passionately with a human element behind it. As far as rent increases go, I've got a couple stores that we've done aggressive lease ups in over the last, call it 6 months. So because of those aggressive lease ups, we are sending rent increases because their prices are in the 40 and 50 cents a square foot when they should be $1, $1.25. So they are getting rent increases, but the overall arching rent increases are kind of stagnant now. And then as far as actually auctioning them off, we haven't got to that point yet. I'll see what next month brings. And it's possible we might do some that are 60 or 90 days that were prior to COVID-19, that we might end up auctioning those off, but then again, deal with all the other ones on a one-on-one basis.
Right. We talked about that on March 25th. A lot of us said, it's all circumstantial, just like it is any other time that you're running a storage business. If you had people who were late for 6 months, not paying their rent for 6 months before this happened, you know, do they really get a pass because of this? It's really not related to what's happening now. That was something that was happening long before. BNA, did you want to add something?
We're pretty much doing everything that Raheem had said, with the exception of auctions. We did pause auctions temporarily, but this week we started to kick that back off. But it's really for individuals that, like you just said, Jenny, that we're past due, far past due. They're not communicating with us. So we decided we're going to go ahead and move forward with those folks, business as usual. As far as anybody else, I mean, as long as they're communicating with us, you know, we're doing payment plans. We have a lot of commercial tenants, and if they have a good rental history with us, you know, we're willing to give some credits as a half month or a full month. It just kind of depends. But for us, it's all about communication with the tenants, and as long as they're communicating with us, you know, we're kind of happy to work with them in any way that we can.
BNA, and I'll ask you first since you're still unmuted. Someone asked about merchandise, if y'all are selling merchandise at the facility still, and if so, how you're handling that. I see John was shaking his head, yes, I think so. You want to answer that, BNA?
Sure. I mean, again, it varies by store. Also, you know, some of our stores know, but our New Braunfels facility, you know, while the traffic is lower, it's still very much business as usual, and they're busy out there. So, you know, it kind of depends on the facility. If it's a facility that's always doing really well with merchandise, then they're selling it, but not at the level that we would normally be selling it, you know, in April.
Right. John?
So
That's exactly what I was going to say, is I've seen a considerable drop off, but I'm actually surprised at how much merchandise we're selling when our front doors are 100% locked. They're still buying it, setting it outside the door, relocking the door. And I'm surprised a bit how much we are. It's considerable drop off, but we're still selling merchandise, which is surprising.
Well, yeah, and if you need those things, I mean, would you rather go to a storage facility where there's a single manager inside of a small office, or do you want to have to go to the grocery store or, you know, Target and wait in line and be around all those people? So I could see the appeal. Raheem, did you want to add something?
Yeah, we've seen a 10% uptick in our overall merchandise sales for the month of April. So we've seen the opposite. Again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, is the training of your manager. So as part of that conversation about somebody moving in, we also talk to that customer about, hey, I see that you rented online. I'm going to have your unit ready to go by the time you get here. And we talk about what are all the items they need. And then we open up the door, we put all their stuff inside that unit and close it for them. So when they show up on the property, everything is ready for them. So it all starts with that training, making sure that you're having that conversation with those folks as they're coming in and building that rapport. If you do a really good job of it, you're absolutely right. Customers do not want to go, and especially in this new era of social distancing, they don't want to jump from location to location to location, trying to pick up different things on the way to storage. They just want to go there, they want to put their stuff in, and they want to run back home into safety. So we're trying to help minimize that. So if you phrase it right, you have the right conversations with people, you'll see the right results. To add to that, it's extremely important in this time that we make sure that our team, as I said earlier, 66% increase in phone calls. So we want to make sure that every phone call is answered in an appropriate time frame. And if your manager's out on the property, you don't miss that call. So if you don't have a call center, you don't have a VoIP phone system that a manager can pick up anywhere on the property, you're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunities right now.
Okay, and we're running long. You know, the thing about these webinars, as opposed to what we've done in years past, is it's such a fluid topic. It's such an important topic. We might run a little long sometimes because we still have some questions coming through. But I have two more questions to ask each of you. One of them, and you only need to answer this obviously if it applies to you, is have any of you applied for the federal aid programs? I think when we talked yesterday, and when Troy joined us today, everyone, all of these companies have applied for federal aid. What's been your experience, and have any of you been successfully funded? I'll start with Troy because he told us about their experience.
Yeah, we applied. I believe it was last Friday, got approval, and it funded, if I'm not mistaken, on the storage side, it funded yesterday. And as far as the experience, it was fantastic for me because I didn't have to do it.
Yeah, and Anne had a slightly different experience, so we'll go to her next. But yeah, someone in your company handled that, and you got the money already. Do you know which loans y'all did? Did you
We
do
did the
paycheck
PPP,
protection?
the payroll
Okay.
program.
Payroll protection. Sorry, I said paycheck, but payroll, or is it paycheck protection? By the way, those of you who are on today, we did a webinar. The weeks are running together. I think we did it last week with 3 attorneys talking about these programs, what is required. I mean, everything continues to evolve, and one of the things that they said is don't wait, get on, apply right away. I'm thinking Jenkins was probably already on that day one. Part of the experience has to do with the relationship you have with your local bank, what their experience is, how much they've had as a flood in of new business and traffic. Anne, do you want to speak to your experience?
Well, I went through my local bank that I've been dealing with for 25 years. And I think that the problem they had is a smaller community bank is that they were getting information. It was like a fluid situation for like the first couple of days on what the SBA was going to require from us. And like I said, it was like doing an SBA loan with everything that we had to come up with. It took a couple of days of about 4 of us to put it together. I put it in for a couple of our companies. I'm going to use it if I need it. And if I don't, I'll pay it back. I'm going to just wait and see, what pans out next month as far as collections and how all the stores do. But I laughingly said, yes, I thought they were going to ask me for my firstborn male child. And since my kids have been in storage most of their life and my son works with me here, not a problem. I could offer him up. He could take one.
I'm sure he loves hearing that.
Oh yeah, he was real happy to hear that I was going to just offer him up if needed. But I have been approved and I've signed my loan paperwork. I may have the money in there right now. I don't know, but I heard this morning from them that the money is now done. It's they're out of money this morning. So
the money, the first tranche is gone.
The first group is gone. Yeah.
I had it on good authority 2 weeks ago when this first, came down the pike, that the first tranche will be replaced with another, that there will be funds available again. But, I haven't seen any numbers yet. I haven't seen any stats about how much money has actually been awarded. John, are you talking to someone else? You're talking to someone else, right? Okay, just checking. Okay, and then our last question, since we are at about 1 o'clock, is overall, what's been the biggest challenge for you and what's been the biggest opportunity? We've talked about a few of these. One last question that came through, and y'all can just say yes or no. Have any of you seen any kind of increases in vandalism or break-ins?
No.
No? VNA?
VNA you have?
Yes. And this is in San Antonio?
Yeah, San Antonio, one facility we had, and it could have been a coincidence, maybe nothing related to this at all, but they actually broke into our building and broke down some doors to some mini offices that we had. They were just vagrants looking for anything that captured their eyes, because some of the doors they just opened and then closed when they didn't see that there was anything that was sparkly to them. But we had to get a security guard out there because they actually broke into the building. It wasn't just like an exterior unit door.
Yeah. Well, I can tell y'all that, and Danny sent through a message saying that they'd had a break-in with 6 units. That always happens. That is something we hear year-round from members. There's no way to predict when break-ins are going to happen. On our first webinar on coronavirus, Donald Jones was cautioning people about break-ins because there are folks out there who have more time on their hands and they are not working, and so be vigilant as you always are, but overall we've not been hearing reports from a lot of members who've had break-in.
Jenny, we've had one facility that's an older one that we acquired, normally has an on-site manager who had to cover another facility due to staffing someone else out with COVID or out on quarantine. But what they did do was they cut the locks and replaced them. So when she did her walkthrough on her facility before she went to the other facility for the day, she didn't realize that the units had been broken into until customers started showing up and obviously couldn't get into their unit because their keys weren't working. So there may be some more of that coming down, but nothing looked broken until after we were able to find that out.
Yeah, and we've heard that from members over the years many, many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Break-ins occurred. and I'm not poo-pooing that. I think that's a good point, Amy, that, you know, in that particular case, maybe they're used to a manager being around and somebody keeping an eye on things. And when the opportunity is there, people are going to seize it. So just a word of caution. That last question for y'all, and I'll just kind of run through the group, or you can raise your hand if you want to address this. What's been your biggest challenge, biggest opportunity? You know, it's not all bad news. We're hearing from some of you that rentals are up, that you're seeing some activities. Is there anything, Raheem, for y'all that's been a huge challenge that you've had to overcome? And conversely, have there been any opportunities that you want to point out?
No, challenging wise, again, it's just maintaining the right perspective as we get into this thing. You know, as we talked about, there's many other industries that are struggling, and our industry, thankfully, we're in an industry that we can keep going, right? This is a very resilient industry, recession resilient, and you know, a couple other things that we're working on is making sure that we work on innovation as we get into this thing. We're seeing that there's a big shift with online into Facebook, and Facebook is also doing their own little protection plan. They're giving out $100 million as grant for folks if they want to spend more on Facebook. That's supposed to be opening up next week. So we've gotten ourselves ready to go to make sure that we get in front and bid for that. Google is going to be doing something similar for pay-per-click. So just, you know, there's a lot of different things that are happening. So you just need to be ready for those innovations, and then just use social media to grow your business at this point.
Some great tips there. Troy, do you want to add anything as far as, you know, the challenges that y'all had to overcome, or anything good that's come out of this?
Yeah, I would say from a challenge standpoint is you know, it's staying on top of it, right? It's moving every single day. It seems like it's changing and evolving, and you know, next are we going to be required to have a mask in the stores, and so there's some challenges there. I think the key for us to overcome that is we've just been in constant communication with our DMs and our staff, and continue to stay. And that's, unfortunately, it becomes a pain to them, I would think, when you're on a call every other day. But here I gotta give John props again to this. The busier you get, you gotta slow down. You gotta regroup and come back again at it. And so the challenge here is it continues to evolve, is you need to slow back down, regroup, and then disperse again. You need to get the clear communication back out to your teammates.
I got a note from one of our staff members. She sent me a message through Slack that they did get some calls from some members about break-ins. I mean, you know, one call from a member about a break-in, not to poo-poo that again, but that doesn't make a trend. We hear that that's a year-round thing for us. Members probably get several calls a week. Someone's experiencing a break-in. Again, be vigilant, but we're not seeing any kind of huge increase yet. But definitely be aware of it, be on top of it. Somebody else, here's another one. Christine said they had 20 plus break-ins. Oh, sorry, facilities around us were having 20 plus break-ins. They had none. And Christine, who also called herself the queen of rentals, said, I attribute that to on-site management. She's the manager there. It's like, you go, girl. Good for you. Let me check, see if we have any last questions. Somebody's just wanting to thank all the panelists. Check the chat real quick. Someone else pointed out that Raheem was on a storable session that he thought was very well done. A lot of good content. You know, clearly we're not the only ones putting content out. There are Storage Pug and Storable, and I'm sure there's a couple of others. Jim Ross's group, they've all been doing online presentations. We have tried to stick with operators, tried to stick with those folks. And again, we chose these people because they represent so many facilities out there, and because they are great operators and great members. So thank you for doing that. One thing I wanted to do, Teresa, if you're standing by, if you could show the signs that V&A and John and Raheem sent to us, if you could share your screen. I meant to do that early on, but we moved away from that. These are signs that they created for their facilities. Just wanted y'all to see that. So this first one is, and if you'll go to click on it, Teresa, and yeah, from current slide, there you go. So this is Devon Self-Storage's sign, nicely done. You know, clearly the emphasis here is on the fact that they are open, very clean, very simple. You know, they didn't get into any of the nitty gritty. So let's see the next one. This is a sign that Pinnacle had made, and as I understand from John, this is a very large sign. He said that some of the signs they put up early on were too small, probably including the ones that TSSA put out there as samples. So they created a custom sign, much larger, with their hours, with their phone number, and they've got that on display. And then the last one, B&A sent to us. This is through the glass, obviously, so there's some glare here, but yes, we're here to help. We're practicing social distancing, give a call for payments, no contact leasing. Just like a lot of things that our members do, y'all quickly pivoted, and created something good and created some good examples. Okay, Teresa, you can take that down. Thank you. What we put up on our website was done in probably 10 minutes from a lawyer. And no, I don't want to cast shade on our lawyer, but a lawyer writing a marketing sign is not always going to be your best way to go. John's like, you don't want all of these disclaimers and all these words. You want something that's easy to read and that's visible. And I think Raheem and these things that y'all have done are great examples of thinking like you're supposed to think. And Troy made some great points about slowing down. I know for me personally, it has been a huge adjustment not to be in the office and to be working remotely. I couldn't stop working. It's been a difficult time. Not that that was different from what I normally did, but we have to stop and take stock and figure out what's the best thing to do. Thank you to all of our panelists for
I have
being
an
here.
idea.
Yes, sir.
Turn off the damn television. There's the
I
idea.
never had the television on, and that wasn't
Turn the
case
damn
for me.
news off.
Yeah,
It'll be
exactly.
fine.
I'm not a news person. I don't watch TV, and that's
I don't
John's.
mean you. I mean everybody.
Everyone. Turn off
Common sense comes in. Turn the damn television off.
Yeah.
So
For me, and I'm sure for a lot of you, it was about the devices. It's about, the messages coming 1,000 miles an hour, emails, Slack, all of the physical contact that we had translating into electronic contact became very overwhelming very quickly. And I thank you, Troy, for your words of advice today. I think that's a great thing to remember, to slow down, take stock, figure out what to do next. Don't panic. We've got some great advice from our folks here. One last thing for you who are still on, I can't really tell how many participants are still on let me check my questions here. Big shout out to the former boss, Ann. She is just the best. This was one of your former employees, Ann.
Yes, I know who it is.
Yeah. And then the biggest challenge, Adrian says, is holding rental prices at current levels. And Carrie echoes what you said, John, turn off the news. John's a big advocate for this, and we all want to take this opportunity. Don't panic on pricing. That's the thing, is people are very quick to jump. If you're not seeing the facts and you're not seeing the data and you're not seeing the statistics to support it, don't do it. Don't start offering specials and start cutting rates just because you're fearful. So that's my little preaching today. John said, turn off the TV. I say, don't act out of fear. Use information, use data. And thank all of you for being here with us today. Send us a message or a chat right now if you want to hear something else. We're navigating this. None of these folks are holding themselves up as experts, but they are, in our minds, they're experts because they're out there making the best they can of this particular circumstance. And thank you, each of our panelists, for being, what is Raheem's website? Someone wants to know what your website is, Raheem?
DevonSelfStorage.com. DEVON, Devon.
Yes, and John's gloving and masking up. Wants to go, let's see, make sure that I didn't miss any of the last questions. A lot of thank yous from participants. If you didn't watch the first webinar, that was our early days, but it was what we were doing then. A lot of the questions that may not have been addressed today were probably addressed then, more about staffing, more about decisions as far as that goes. We're kind of settling into our new normal now, and I'm sure that we will probably, thank you, Raheem, for putting that up on the chat. We'll have a new normal. We'll touch base again. Some of these panelists, I think, will probably be willing to let us know what we're doing a month from now. We don't know what next month is going to look like yet. So fingers crossed, Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you to everyone for being here with us today. We are recording this. We will post it. So again, a great big thank you to our panelists. Very, very helpful.
Thanks, Jenny.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.